Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to finally talk to you via audio rather than just our discussion forums. But what I wanted to do today is just walk you through my artifact and 3 or 4 questions that I'm really focusing on in my paper. So for my artifact, I actually chose 2 documents and I provided the links there. And then we're going to actually go through each question and then scroll through the document with some highlights to show you what I'm looking at. So the first one is a Curriculum Development Board of Education policy for Urbana School District 116, so just down the road. And then the second document is their curriculum overview document. So the first one is Board of Education policy. Every district in the state of Illinois has policy 640, which allows them to develop and implement those curriculum. And then the second one is kind of the next step is everything has to align with this overview document. So the first one breaks down into 4 distinct sections: adoption, experimental education programs and pilot projects, development, and curriculum guides. So you can see here the headings, and this is a boilerplate policy. So most districts would be the same throughout. So we're not going to focus too much on that one. But then the second document, as you can see, starts on the right-hand side there, is the curriculum, broken down into subject area and then essential elements, kind of an overview statement, then addressing student differences, acknowledging that not everyone's going to learn the same, etc. Then the standards that are aligned with Illinois Learning Standards, Common Core standards, their priority standards, which are broken down into 7 different standards, not exactly based on subject, which we'll touch on later. And then finally, their safety net skills. And then it's kind of interesting here, they've got their standards by grade, but then also provided there in Spanish, so you can access those. So I want to talk about first is what is the prevailing curriculum paradigm from which the artifact was created? And then also, kind of coupled with that, what can the artifact teach us about that particular curriculum paradigm from which it was created? So first of all, I'm going to talk about essentialism. So it's one of those that it takes another step. So new essentialism is something that is talked about multiple times in our readings, but essentialist curriculum is structured around a set of predetermined standards for competency. McGreeny 2009 talks about that. Essentialism focuses on skills and subjects, including a quote-unquote back-to-basics approach to educate a competent person. Hirschbach, Bennett, Finn, Ornstein all talk about that. Ornstein, our original reading, I think week 2, we talked about it. So skills from the past and the future is what is focused on here. So we are thinking about what have we valued in the past, and then what are we going to value in the future we may not even know. We've talked about occupations that we're teaching our students for that don't exist right now, 10 years from now, etc. So it's based on skills, not subjects. So a lot of essentialism research and literature talks about subjects, so social studies, history, and it is valued based on this historians. So skills now takes it the next step, and that's what this document does. So then finally, it's talking about essential skills and backward design from how this artifact teaches that. So that's what I want to focus on. And then what I've highlighted here are how these words feed into essentialism. So goals, achievement, knowledge, skills, and abilities, regulations, articulation, standards, and then ultimately getting to that testing. So the curriculum policy document focuses on this is what needs to be done to accomplish these skills and also essential skills feeding into essentialism. And then moving on to the actual document itself, the overview document, first of all, our program section breaks it down by subject matter. You see those bullet points on the lower left-hand side, talks about language arts, math, science, social studies. So that's the old way of thinking of essentialism, but then you also see a standard portion, priority standards, and then they're outlined as well. So again, essentialism from an essential skills point of view, not necessarily a subject point of view. So progressivism is something that also talks about moving this to the next step, but essentialism is really what drives this curriculum document. So then moving on to our next question is what assumptions are being made in the artifact. I've got 4 particular assumptions that are made mostly in the overview document, not the policy document. And then you can see that they're highlighted here in yellow, green, blue, and red. So let's talk about red first. We'll kind of bounce back and forth between these documents. just so you can see. So red prevents teachers from assessing their own teaching method to promote student learning for different groups of students. So it's very boilerplate, and you must follow it in this particular way. So you see there on the right-hand side, teachers are highlighted briefly, and then you jump down again to teachers recognize the need to modify, adapt, or enrich the learning experiences. And then teachers emphasize written communication in all courses and in cross-curricular projects. That's the only time teacher is actually acknowledged in either of these documents. So they are not allowed to, based on the written word here. Now, there's always interpretation of policy, so it prevents teachers from assessing their own teaching method. So then let's jump up to the yellow, which we don't have anything particularly highlighted here, but outcome focused with little guidance for what processes or content help achieve such an accomplishment. So what do I mean by that? Think about our very first conversation when we discussed what is curriculum. Is it instructional activities and processes, or is it just the outcomes? And that's what this document and the second overview document does. It's completely outcome focused. You must get to X, Y, and Z, but how? So again, there's probably places in Urbana's district that says more descriptive of what they're looking for. But this document does not do that. It does not provide a process. It does not provide any content that must be achieved to get to these standards. So that is something that might be a gap in making sense of these documents. Sense making is another theory, Weick and Durbin, outside of the realm of curriculum. It's information systems and communication scholars that looking at Weick is W-E-I-C-K. So then the final two in the middle there, blue and green. All students can be prescribed the same way. So we assume that all students are the same. We're going to touch on that. There is a section that addresses it. And then finally, this is the one I want to take the most time. Everyone knows the curriculum. So first of all, let's talk about the green. Addressing student differences is the section that kind of makes a broad statement that talks about children enter school with different abilities and learning needs, and then goes on to not all students progress at the pace of a typical learner. What is a typical learner? They need to define that. This assumption is made that we understand what they are trying to accomplish in this overview document. So it makes broad statements, a broad stroke of all students in their district. And this is a district of 4,000 plus students, that typical learners, what does that mean? But then I want to really hit this one home, the blue. Everyone knows the curriculum. And this is what I'm talking about. Everyone knows the curriculum. Everyone takes responsibility for student learning. Everyone uses data to make instructional decisions. How can they assume that everyone knows this? And they're talking about not just the teachers and staff. They're talking about parents, students. They're talking about everybody that's a stakeholder in this district. Everyone knows it. So for the essential elements to be effective, everyone must participate and be a part of this process. How can we make that assumption that everyone will be a part of it? So again, just hitting home that everyone knowing the curriculum, being a part of it, is a wild assumption for this district to make. Maybe some linguistic choices to shore that up. And then finally, what is being socially reproduced, subverted, reconceptualized, reconstructed, and or challenged? I chose two of those, reproduced and reconstructed. So reproduced, the meta-narratives are continually found that continue to silence and overgeneralize populations. And then reconstructed is key concepts and skills. So we talked about it earlier for the yellow part, reconstructed. We've moved from subject matter that needs to be done in terms of essentialism to concepts and skills. So broad overview, we'll get to that in a second. And then what do I mean by the green part? That overgeneralize populations and particularly silence them. So not all students progress at the pace of a typical learner. We're going back to that one phrase that really pops out in this document. Not all students progress at the pace of the typical learner. So again, we have assumed that this is the threshold, that everybody should be getting to this point to be an effective learner here. And that silences some groups that maybe they have learning disabilities or they don't speak the language. It's interesting that in the last part they actually have links to Spanish versions of the standards. So it's interesting there. So then let's go to reconstructed. This is the bulk of this document. Priority standards at the school district. They have outlined it into content literacy, writing proficiency, oral proficiency, critical thinking, collaboration, technology, and civic responsibilities. Not subject-oriented. Their standards are trying to accomplish 7 competency-based, and they're looking for skills that apply to lots and lots of situations in society. So they've taken essentialism to the next step. Essential skills, not essential subjects. So those 2 documents provide a great foundation to critique this district. Lots of good things happening in this district as well. I'm not saying that these documents are the worst thing that I've ever seen, but there are some assumptions being made, some linguistic choices that complicate, but they have taken a curriculum theory that I align with in terms of essentialism. Yes, I'm not talking about breaking everything down by subject, but these essential skills are vital, and they see that as well. So once again, everybody, it was a pleasure talking to you all semester long. I hope you enjoy my presentation here and work on your projects as well. I'd be more than happy to share my final document with you as well. Enjoy the rest of your semester, enjoy your break, and I hope to see you all very, very soon.